Hey all, today we'll be looking at RedwoodSDK, which is a framework that aims to do React server components on Cloudflare. And so we're going to look at how we can add nuqs to that and see how it behaves, how routing works in Redwood, and how to potentially use nuqs client-side, maybe server-side, like if we want to pass the search params in the Cloudflare worker from the request that it receives, and do server-side rendering this way. So we'll see how far we go with all this. And this is something that I been interested to do after discussion with MJ from the Redwood core team, who pinged me on Twitter. And so, yeah, it would be interesting to see how it behaves with nuqs. So there we go. Hopefully MJ will join us in the chat at some point. And yeah, we'll see how we get there. Right, so the first thing we're going to do is set up a Redwood application. So quick start, we have a create thing that's a command that allows us to do that. So we're going to open a terminal. I'll go into cdev. Nope, where am I? Lost nuqs, okay. Let me just create a new thing, create. So it's RWSDK, and we'll put it in nuqs Redwood, for example. That should create a nuqs Redwood directory, and then we can probably go into that code nuqs Redwood. We'll have a few. All right, put this in full screen. We don't need an agent. We're going to do this by hand. Just make sure. Oh, hi MJ. Nice to see you here. Let me just pop the chat here. And the horde is here. Hello, Ogdev. The horde is everywhere. Cool. Nice to have you here, MJ. I will probably have a lot of questions because I did a little preview of Redwood yesterday. And so, yeah, we're going to have some questions to make this work. All right. Back to the code. So here we created a Redwood starter. The first thing that we're going to do is make sure that it is secure, because there was a vulnerability on React Server Components yesterday. So yeah, it is already secure, 19.3, so that's good. Just want to make sure that we have all the latest and greatest fixes. Yes, perfect. What else do we have? Vite plugin, do we need to upgrade those? The types, might as well update the types. What were there? Oh wait, no, those were pinned, so they'll probably not do that. Oh yeah, we'll keep the rest as it is, because it's not that critical. TypeScript, we could have 5.9. Let's just keep those like that. What I really want to have is the latest React version, because this is something to advertise for, react.dev. /blog. There was a new vulnerability in React released last night. On top of the RCE that we had last week about remote code execution, we have now 2 more vulnerabilities that need to be fixed. That are less serious, I guess, but less impacting, I guess, but it is still a denial of service and potentially exposing some secrets in source code if you have like them serialized through your source code. So I'll let you read the React blog and update your dependencies. So you want to have, where are the patched versions? 19.2.3 if you're on 19.2, or 19.1.4 if you're on 19.1. You get the idea. So yeah, that would be interesting to update. Even though it's Friday, still you have to push on Friday when it comes to security vulnerabilities. Anyway, so this bit of code is secure. That's great. We are going to install. I don't have a log file here, but we're going to read the README. npm install. I guess I can use pnpm. There's no log file, so let's go for pnpm. pnpm install. Let that run. We're just going to start it as it is like that, just to see if it works. pdev. So it's going to build some things. And this is a Vite thing, so 5173. We're going to pop down the side, pop that one. Yeah, this is not going to fit on the side. If I do it like this, let me just collapse. Yeah, that'll do. Localhost 5173. Nice. We have a little bit of a flash event style content when we reload the page. That's interesting. But anyway, this is working. So let's move that one here. Why are you not on half? Okay, so you need to be half and half. That's how we'll do it. Need to find a way to get Firefox to shrink more than that so that I can have it like literally 1/3 of the screen. Otherwise I can use, I'll probably do that actually. I'll use Firefox Nightly, which is a bit localhost 5173, which spells Vite, V-I-T-E, if you never know what the port is. Pop that one back on, just get rid of this, rid of that. Here we'll keep the docs on, and we'll put these two side by side. So code will be, there we go. That's good. Right, so now we have our browser running this thing and the server running here. So this runs on Cloudflare, but I suppose with the Vite development environment, you can build everything locally. And so we're going to look at how to integrate nuqs first client side, and then probably move through the server side and see how to integrate it across the network. If we wanted to consume the search params in the Cloudflare worker request handler to do server-side rendering, like fetching some custom things based on the search params or rendering custom content. We'll start with the client side first, and then we'll go across the network. All right. So we've set up our project. That's all good. Perfect. Let's get rid of that, and let's add a client component. We're just going to add a client component for now with local state using use state, and then we'll progressively enhance it to add nuqs on top of that. So how does this work? Let's have a look at the files that we have. I have a worker file, which looks like a router. This is how we define which route pings what component. And this document here, from what I understand, looks very much like the root layout in Next.js app router. It seems to be like building the whole document. And it passes these children here to hydrate. Well, not necessarily to hydrate, because these might be server components, but to give the structure. So like this is basically a layout. And so we could potentially add our nuqs adapter around these children here. I did try that last night and it didn't work, so we'll have to ask MJ why. And so far, what we need to do is add a client component that does the classic hello world of state management, the counter button. So we're going to do that. I suppose because we have code-based routing, we don't have file-based routing. So that means I can probably organize my my code a bit how I want, because I have this welcome thing here, which is a component, and this home that includes this thing. So it's not like this would become /welcome. I don't think welcome, that wouldn't match. It's not like file-based routing. It is declarative routing based on code. And so that allows you to, I believe, get type-safe links as well, from what I've seen. Like this link here allows you to do link, and here you have a list of strongly typed path names. So we can probably also connect that to nuqs, which will be nice for full-on type-safe linking. Cool. But that'll be probably towards the end if we get to it. Let's add a client component. So we'll call it counter.tsx. This will be a client component. So you use clients. We're using RSCs here. It's not an Next.js thing, actually. Use client is a React thing. So whenever you do client-side React using hooks, or whenever you're using a React Server Components Aware framework, you need to have this directive, not just for Next. Export const counter, no, not const, function counter. And we're going to do the classic, I can't type, const use state from React 0, that'll be count, set count. Return a button. It's not deal with styles at the moment. Set count, count plus 1. Yeah, we just, yeah, we could have that here, but I want this to be a function so that we don't close on the value. And so we have the classic, yeah, basic hello world of state management. We're going to add this into our home page on top of the welcome thing. So we're going to add it here. Counter. And something broke. Reload the page. No, there we go. Count 0. Okay, so increasing the count, reload the page, it resets. Classic. Nothing new about this. Perfect. All right, let's try and hoist this into the URL now. So let's start install nuqs for starters. We're going to do pip add nuqs, pnpm add nuqs. I have these little shorthands for pnpm because I never like typing the whole thing. pi for install, pa for add, pad for add as devdeps, etc. Nuqs 285, perfect. So this shouldn't have changed anything. We're not using it yet. But what we can do now is, before we write a custom adapter, this is using React on the client. So the one thing that we can try when we try a new framework is to try the React SPA adapter, which is the dumbest adapter there is, because it doesn't have any bindings to any framework or anything. It just uses the URL from location.search and updates it with the history API. So we can try this and see if it actually works using this thing. So the first thing I tried was to put it in the document. So let's see what that gives us. So if we do nuqs adapter from React, yep. Wrap our children with this. So this is the React SPA adapter. And this is, I think, where it started to break. No module found for nuqs adapter React. In module lookup for use client directive. Okay, so because this, if I go to the actual implementation, has a use client directive, maybe this is where it breaks. So maybe MJ, you might be able to shine some light on this. Because this nuqs adapter is essentially a context provider. So it is a client thing. It uses a context, React context, to propagate a hook down to the use query state hooks from nuqs so that they can consume a little thing. We'll see how the interface looks like in a minute. But this is a client wrapper that needs to wrap all these children. And so when I tried to do this last night, it did not work indeed. We got this error. But I was able... let me check. You were saying... It would be better to create a layout that you wrap your routes in worker.tsx. All right, let's try and do that then. Okay, so how do we do layouts? Let's go back to the docs. Do we have anything about layouts? Layouts, yes. Redwood provides a powerful layout function for creating shared UI layout across your routes. Yes, that's basically what we need. Example with code. Perfect. We need a layout. We get the children, and we get the request info. Oh, that's interesting for later. Nice. And so it's basically, yeah, a thing that accepts children, wraps whatever we need around. And how do we use this? We wrap, okay, functionally we compose those things. Perfect. Let's try that. Let's try that in our... we're going to put it next to... We'll put it here in the app. We'll call it layout.tsx. Export function root layout, we'll call it, for example. It's not the root layout in the same way as Next.js because it doesn't generate the whole document. That is still part of the document component, which is a bit like the underscore document in the pages router in Next. I'm always trying to find ways to explain those concepts based on what other people might know. And so here we have children. And return, no, not all this, just children. Wrap it in fragment for now. My prettier is not set right because we have, let me see if I can change that so that we can wrap it a bit better. I go prettier. What is the print width? There we go. Let's do 60. Yeah, that's better. Right. Okay, so now we could potentially add our nuqs adapter from React here. Let's see what it does and remove it from the document. Now we need to wrap. Interesting. It's no, we still have the styles. It's fine. Now we need to wrap this routes in this layout. So what was the syntax again? So render document, then array. I'll move this to the side. Render document, then we have an array. We put our layout here. Except that this layout thing is a function from, okay, so function from Redwood. Layout from the router. Here we pass the root layout components, and then its children, which are the routes. I believe this will do. Root layout, why are you not happy about this? Layout, app layout, root. Yeah, that seems about right. All right, so what is the problem? Children is optional. Ah, yeah, indeed. Let's make it not optional. They are not optional. Oh, you want them to be optional. Is that the problem? Yeah, okay. Need it to be optional. Fine. All right. Let's go back to our browser. And when we reload this, we still have this issue. So yeah, that did not really help, unfortunately. Unless I left some things in somewhere else. No, this is clean. I should have initialized Git before I started so that I could have some basic stuff. So let me just do that. We'll commit. What is the things that I added since then? This counter, yeah. This layout. Well, let's start from here. Show init. So we can see what we're changing. Try making layout a client component. That's a good point. Use clients. Ah, better. Nice. So now we're using the nuqs adapter. So that was the idea from MJ to make the layout a client, because we are using clients things in there, but apparently it is not capable of finding that this thing has a use client directive. So we need to hoist the client directive to the top. So that's interesting to know. Okay, so now we still have our counter that lives in memory. So we need to see if we can use nuqs for that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to abstract it into two functions, use local state and use URL state. Use local state will be exactly what we're doing here. Return use state 0. So default state is 0, and this is just an in-memory state. And we're going to do the same thing with nuqs, use URL state. So this time return use query state from nuqs. We'll call it count, and this will be an integer, parse as integer from nuqs with a default value of 0, so that it's non-nullable. And so now we can abstract this with use local states, and this should work exactly the same. And we reset its resets, and that's fine. And if we replace this with that, now it works. And now it works. There we go. That wasn't easy. That wasn't really hard. But this is still using the React SDK. So the main problem will happen when we want to go across the network with this. So yeah, first instinct, if you want to try nuqs in a custom framework, is to try the React SPA adapter. Because this one will likely work everywhere React works. It's just that it will not interact as well with the framework when it comes to do SSR, if the framework can do SSR. And there are some optimizations, I suppose, that might make more sense to customize in a custom adapter. So let's have a look at the, yeah, exactly. That is the problem that we will have here is the hydration problem. We have this flash of unstyled text, which I'm not exactly sure where it comes from. But if we were to see, okay, can I actually, performance network, can I slow this down? Throttling. Let's put in a regular 4G, I should do. If I slow this down, do we see this being 0? And then slowly as it comes, it rehydrates to 6. So that is because we don't have server-side aware access to those search params to, on the server, render this counter component with the right state here. So that would be why we get this this flash, because on the server it doesn't know anything, so it uses the default value. And when it renders on the client, it picks that up and renders with it, and therefore it gives us this hydration error that we have here. Because we start on 0 on the server, and then we switch to 6, but during the hydration pass. So there's two ways of dealing with this. We can fence all those dynamic client components so that they only render after hydration. That is one way to do it. But the best way to do it, because Redwood is a React Server Components framework, would be to access those search params on the server and be able to get this value be correct on the server-side pass so we don't have the hydration problem, and also be able to access it for data fetching. So this React, where is it? This adapter from React is not going to cut it, I guess, for this part. And so we will have to build our own. So we're going to start doing that. Let me just get some things cleaned up. Where can we put this? In shared? Shared, that seems fine. We'll call it nuqs adapter.ts. No TSX needed here. This will be a use client file again, because we're going to be exporting hooks and stuff. So we need stuff from import from nuqs adapters custom. Somehow I don't have auto-completion on those paths. That's interesting. That's actually a bug that some people have reported, and I don't really know how to reproduce or to fix. So if anybody knows how to fix autocomplete issues on paths, which does seem to work from time to time. Like if I try and do nuqs adapter, you see I have these suggestions which are correct. So there is some form of autocomplete. There is not when I try to do the import from nuqs/nuqs, if I type it correctly, adapters custom. And so this allows you to access the internals of how nuqs works and how it provides adapters to other frameworks. And so we're going to start building one like this. What we'll start with first is this create adapter provider. So as I said, an adapter is essentially a context provider, as we're just going to rename it without the unstable part, so it looks a bit cleaner. Export const nuqs adapter is this, and here we pass a hook function, which we will call function use Redwood nuqs adapter. So the one thing that this context passes is a hook. And we pass it here, and it will tell me that this hook doesn't match the signature because the signature needs to be unstable adapter interface. Let's just rename this as that so that it's a bit cleaner. That is a type. And this adapter interface returns a lot of different things, but the two important things that are required is search params and update URL. So an adapter is a way to ask the framework, how do you read the URL and how do you update it? So you have this feedback loop that tells nuqs how to access the search params in the hook so that we can parse them and return them as state, and how to update it when we want to push updates after all the queuing and everything happens. So we need to conform to this adapter interface. And so we can return something completely stupid that doesn't do anything. Search params, new URL search params, empty. We're not even going to do that. No. We're not going to do that. And update URL. This one will probably have to do a callback. Update URL equals use callback, just so we use some React client-side things to satisfy this use client up here. And this we can make it a function, no arguments here. And if I do, what is it called again? Update URL. Yep, let's remove the unstable again. As that is a type. This will give us two things, search and options. Search is a URL search params. It is what we want to set in the URL. It is already pre-merged and everything. And the nuqs adapters thingy works for me. You're using NeoVim. That's very interesting. So it could be a VS Code problem then. That we have the problem that we had with the imports. Oh, hi Dima. And hi Chris. A lot of the horde is here. That's nice. So what we can do, I just disable my stream. Let me just get these two back. There we go. So yeah, these are URL search params objects that we will store into the URL. And these options will give us a lot of different things, like whether or not we want to go across the network, whether we want to do a history push or history replace, scroll, all those things. So for now, we'll just pass it like that. It doesn't do anything. It just satisfies the thing. And I just want to make sure we can use that in our layout. So that will break our button, obviously. But at least I want to see if we don't have any imports or anything like that. Shared nuqs adapter.js. That no? Where are we? Shared. Oops. Shared nuqs adapter.js. Okay, so this broke the styles. Oh, okay, no. Oh yeah, sorry. I still had the throttling in. I think. So this obviously breaks because it doesn't read anymore. If we go to our thing, those search params are always empty. So that state doesn't get what is in the URL. So let's try and connect that. The one thing to know with these search params is that they have to be reactive whenever the URL changes. So in the official adapters, we have a way to spy on the history API to see when it's being requested to change the URL, and then we can optimistically update those things. Some frameworks might give us a use search params hook that already does this for us by giving us a declarative, either an object or URL search params object that re-renders whenever something changes in the URL. I don't think there is anything like this in Redwood. I haven't seen anything of that sort. There is, however, something that's very interesting in the client SDK, this navigate function, which we will need to update the URL. But in terms of reading the URL, I think the only option we have currently is to read from location.search. So let's have a look at how this might work. We're going to store this into a use optimistic from React, because I need to be able to set those states optimistically when we do an update, so that the feedback loop works better for nuqs. So we have these search params, set search params, for example. And here we need to pass it 1 to 2 arguments. Interesting. What is the second one? Oh, reducer. Yeah, we won't need that. But here we need to pass it the initial search params, which will come from location.search, but on the server, we don't necessarily have access to that location.search, I believe, unless Cloudflare is doing some magic. Let's have a look. Let's try that. So the new URL search params location.search, but I believe this will break exactly on the server. So we need to tell whether we have access to that. Type of location is an object. then we can do that. Otherwise, for now, we'll, oops, no. Let's move that one here. And that. There is no question mark here now. There we go. Always return a URL search params object. And if we're on the client, we have access to that location. We can parse that. Otherwise, empty for now, but this will pose problems later. We'll fix that when we need to. Let me just connect that thing. So now we have, as you see, our state that updates because it detected the location.search, passed it through that thing, down through the context to the use query state in our component, and then it passes it into a number, renders it, everything. So we have the read part that works. But if you'll notice that if I click here, it increments the local state, but it doesn't do anything else. It doesn't render anything. Let me just put the nuqs debug logs. Local storage.debug equals nuqs. So that I can show you that we apply all these updates, but we don't have, let me just go and do the console on its own. Yeah, we flush all those queues, we apply all those states. Nuqs uses a optimistic local state, so that state is always optimistic, but there is the updates are queued, but they land in this function, which doesn't do anything. So the URL obviously does not update yet. So let's try and use that. We had this navigate function from the Cloudflare client. It takes an href and some options. So let's build an href. The href, I believe we could pass, if we pass the whole URL, I tried that last night and it did not work. We need to pass the path name, the search params, the hash, I believe. That would make sense. I mean, the hash will not be sent to the server. We want to maintain it if it is available in the URL. So I suppose we would have to add that too. So we can do, at this stage, we are in the client, so we can access location. Location.pathname, keep the same. Search, we need to serialize it. So we have a custom serializer for search params in nuqs, which does something a bit fishy. It doesn't encode some of the URL, some of the characters in the URL to make them pretty. But this needs to change a little bit, I guess. Ooh. That'll be really cool, Chris, if you can get some more people on the stream. Yeah, thank you. Yep. So let's serialize those search params. Const search params equals render query string from nuqs adapter custom. So this will turn this URL search params object into a string. And we can do, no, it already takes care of the question mark. So you can just connect them together. You can just concatenate them together. And so we do that. What else can we do? I saw that we had some options here. History is push or replace or undefined. It's great because I have the same thing, options.history. So I can just connect that as it is. And now when we change the configuration in nuqs, it will choose to whether push or update or replace, sorry. And the other thing was info. What is that? Scroll behavior. Oh, scroll behavior. That's interesting. Auto instance. No, that's not the one I want. I want whether or not to scroll to top. There we go. Options.scroll. So when this is true, we want to scroll to the top. When this is false, we don't. I'll just leave the behavior as it is. I think that'll do. Let's see how this behaves. Probably it will not because, yeah, we have some issues. It does update, but we have this flash because it re-renders somehow. The problem is we have not used this set optimistic thing. And nuqs kind of expects this thing to be optimistically updated when the URL updates, because URL updates like this, they are asynchronous. They're not using async await or anything, but it is a request that you send to the browser for it to update the URL. But that will take some time. It will take a tick or two of the event loop. And so if we re-render with that value, nuqs will not have detected the change, and then it will revert itself, and it's a bit of a mess. So this is why we use use optimistic when we can, when we do support Next.js, not Next.js, sorry, React 19. And so this allows us to do this optimistic update when we call this thing. So we have this feedback loop that stays optimistic. So we need to do this in a transition, start transition. Always call set optimistic in a transition. Otherwise it yells at you. Set search params. And I can just pass it the search. No need to copy it. And might as well do the whole thing in the transition as well, so that everything is part of the same update, I guess. Let's have a look at what this does. We still have this flash. We still have this flash because of that empty string here. But it does update the URL, and if I refresh, it does have the right value on read. So we're getting there. But we have this problem. So the problem that we have here is that when this runs on the server, it does not have access to this location.search here. And so it needs to be able to have the same information in the request that being sent to the Cloudflare worker handler to pass it somehow in here so that we can have this search param thing be valid on the server side. And that is something that I haven't been able to do last night. So MJ, if you're still around, that would be a little help that we could look into. Oh, it's only 10:30. Well, I'm going so fast on this thing. I was expecting this to last 2 hours, but yeah, we'll see. So yeah, the thing that I saw is that you can get the request information. I saw that in the docs for the layout thing, which is where, that's the landing page. Layout here, yeah. We had, where was it? Here, this request info in our layout component. Layout props, I could probably use that actually, that's a good point. Let me go to the code, into my layout file. So this would be layout props. And here we have access to this request info, which is interesting. We're going to log this request info and not everything. I just want the requests.url. Wrap this into URL. And so what I want now is to see when we get access to this. Let's skip all these errors. If I reload the page, we get it on the client, but not on the server. That's very interesting. Let me get rid of the nuqs logs, just so we can see what's happening. Local storage.debug equals empty string, reload. Let me get rid of the errors for now. So yeah, we only have this URL undefined, obviously because it is a request object, but it is not showing in my logs. Let me just kill everything and start again, just to make sure. I did something yesterday, which was, yeah, remove the Wrangler, remove the pre-built modules from Vite, and then start the server again. Just so that you won't get access to request info when layouts are client. Because it's a client component. Okay. So I need to, yeah, that makes sense. Oh, from a fellow Grenoble person. Hello. So yeah, that makes sense. So that means I need to access this request info from a server component, then compose a client component that passes the nuqs adapter and somehow pass this down. That's fun. But that's still, yeah, that might work. Can we use React contexts in a server component in Redwood though? Because otherwise I don't really see how I can pass it down. Unless I use. Can we use react.use in those things? Like if I pass, it wouldn't really necessarily be a promise, I believe. But I need a way to consume that URL. I can just pass the URL essentially, and from there we can extract everything that we need. But what we need is for, I'll find a way to pipe it down to this function because it needs we need to use context essentially to pipe it through. But what we need is to access the URL here when it is rendered on the server. And so that is the question. First off, are client components rendered on the server? The same way they are in Next.js, for example. And if they are, can we use context in a server component to pass this request info down? Because we need to punch a hole through, because this function is only evaluated at this level in the counter component, is only evaluated here when we call this use query state. It is not called at all when we render this nuqs adapter. This is just a provider for a function that will be called later down the line. So there's a little bit of context punching through to happen to pass this this request object here, or just the URL at least. Don't want the whole object, just the URL will be enough. So let's try that. We need two layouts, a client layout and a server layout. Actually, we need two components. We don't necessarily need them to be layouts. So what I need is, I'll do a layout.server. I hope they don't do anything specific with the naming of things, like Remix does, or React router. Layouts.client.tsx. What are you saying, MJ? I'm not sure about context, to be honest. We had issues with that a while back. Not sure if Justin has fixed that. Let's try it. Let's see if we can, oops, sorry. Let's see if we can make this work. So this one will be use clients, and we'll copy everything from here there for now. This one will technically not be a layout. This will just be a client component that wraps this thing. So the question is, can we actually compose them the same way? Because we might have the same problem. Let me check. We'll do it, call it client layout, this one. Type client layout props. It's not layout props this time because we won't have access to this request info. But we want children, which are, I believe, required. Yes, they can be in this case. And we want not the request info, we want the URL, which is a string. We'll call it server URL, just so that we are more explicit. Server URL, change this to client layout props. We'll call it that, server URL. So this should render on the client. Yeah, that's the problem. If it renders only on the client, we're still kind of screwed, I guess. Let me see. We'll see what happens. So this one uses our nuqs adapter, and on the server layout, we can access this request info. So this is no longer a client component. We can get access to this, and now we need to render just our children. For now, we're not going to pass it through. We're going to pass it like that. And I just need to change my import in the worker here, because my layout, has it been renamed? Yeah, it has been renamed. Cool. I'll just rename it server layout, just so that we can understand what's happening. In worker now it's called server layout. All right, move that here, get this one back. So yeah, obviously now it doesn't work. Why doesn't it work actually? Do we have access to that URL first off? No, because of the error. Okay. Server layout. Okay, so here we wrap our children. Yeah, because we need to wrap it in the client layout. That would be why. Client layout. Why did I not rename it correctly? Oh yeah, forgot. Client layout. Layout. So get rid of that one. Yep. Layout server. Client layout. Move that one here. What do you need? Server URL. Yep. Server URL equals we'll call it const server URL. Request info.server URL or empty. Yep. Server URL. Here we can do the same thing, but we'll put some form of notice of where we are. So this is the server layout. And we'll do client layout, do the same thing here. That's client layout, console debugging. So, hi Dominic. The horde is here. This is perfect. So cool to see you guys. All right, let's have a look at our logs. Clear that, reload. Ooh, something failed. App.layout.ts. Let's just kill everything and start again. Maybe some old thing. App.layout.server. Is it that you need the extension? Is that why? No, it's just okay. Okay, so we don't get any logs server side. I suppose they would happen in the console, but we do get them in the browser. That's very interesting. Is it by any chance that you use a service worker to emulate the Cloudflare worker? Because that would make a lot of sense. And that would rejoin a lot of things that people have been trying to do, is to run RSCs in a service worker in the browser, because React server components are very wrongly named. They just are React serializable components. The S should stand for serializable. But you very much can run them in a browser environment, in any other JavaScript environment, like a Cloudflare not a Cloudflare, a service worker or a web worker, like in a different thread, and have that render serialized flight outputs that you can consume in the main thread in the DOM. So there is not necessarily a server happening at all, whether it's a build machine or anything like that. So I wonder if this is the case. Let me have a look at application. Is this where service workers are? No, there is no service worker. So my theory was wrong, unfortunately. Yeah. So it still wonders why we have these logs happening in the client. Maybe this is Vite doing something. Anyway, we seem to be having access to that thing. So when I do that, what happens? Yeah, we have those values be correct across the whole thing. So that's good. All right, let's try and do some stitching to pass all of these things down from our server layout, which accesses this request info. If it's empty, I just want to extract the search at this stage. I'm not interested in the whole URL. So everything else, we just get rid of that. Extract the search. Const search equals new URL request info that requested URL dot search. This might fail, so let's try URL.can pass, and we pass this. We'll call it const URL equals this. If I can pass this URL, then we get .url.search, otherwise empty string. This should be a string, yes. We'll call that server URL. That's our search, actually. We don't care about server URL now. We're going to rename this to server search. We just want the search params. And we'll figure out how to pass it down. Just want to make sure that everything is piped correctly. Server layout search, client layout, server search. Yes, because it comes from the server, literally. So we have server layout, the search is count 15. Client layout, the server search is count 15. Cool. This we can pass into a URL search params if we manage to get it from here down to there. So this is where we need a little bit of context. We're going to create a new context. We'll call it server search context. Create context from React. Where is React? Here. That is a string. By default, it will be empty. Yeah, if we don't have a provider, it'll be empty, yeah. We'll export a provider for this. Export const server search provider. Yeah, that'll do. And we don't need to export a hook because we'll consume it right here. So before I forget, let me just go and wrap this with that. Server search provider value equals server search. Yes, and then close that here. Right, so now I'm going to remove this one here, and I'm going to move this in there. So const server search equals use context, server search context. This is a string, and so here we can try that. Right. And now we don't have hydration errors. Yay! Internal server, oh yeah, that's a favicon. Who cares? We don't care about favicons. And so now, if I go and increase that, remove my logs. Where are my logs? Here. Get rid of that. The one case where this might not work is when this URL can't be passed, but I guess it's because it would be invalid. So as we see, reset the search params defaults to 0. We still have this flash that's kind of annoying, but at least it doesn't seem to be causing hydration errors. So let's slow it down again and have a look at what's happening. Yeah, regular 4G, that was fast enough, slow enough, I guess. And go back to this. So it is always fine. It's just the flash is from the flash event style content. Can we actually remove those styles? Because we're not interested in making it pretty. We're interested in making it work. So I want to get rid of those styles. CSS. Import styles. Yeah. That's coming from the welcome thing. Oh, just get rid of the welcome thing. Home. Okay, there are some root styles somehow that we need to get rid of. Where are those styles defined? Client doesn't have anything. This doesn't do anything. The headers, I don't believe they would add styles. Documents, I don't see any styles in here. Do you guys see any styles? There's stuff in the client, but I don't see any styles in here. Links, no. Welcome. Home. No, we're not adding any styles. How does it render this? Oh, okay, there might have been a cache thing. Now it is instant. Okay, cool. Right, we get some errors. Let's just kill everything and start again, just so that we don't have any cache issues. Cache rules everything around me. Console. All right, reload. Just the favicon. Perfect, but now we have a fully hydrated value on the server, so that's nice. What can we do from here? What can we do from here? Great song, yeah. Dollar Dollar Bill, y'all. Boom. Wait, I've lost my stream. Sorry, guys. I don't have a stream deck, so I'm doing all the switching between things with Raycast, and yeah, it can be a bit rough. Sorry. Let's get rid of this use local state. We don't need that anymore. We're only using nuqs. And so the one thing I would like to do is to go through the network only when I need to. And this is something that I need to look into the network tab. We can get rid of the throttling. We can get rid of the logs. and I just want to see XHR and see when we get this RSC thing. Theoretically, if I click this, ooh, what's happening? What is happening? Get a flash here. It feels like it reloads the whole page when I... yeah, it is a full page navigation. Oh, I think I see why. I remember seeing this in the docs. I believe we need to do init client navigation. If the click element contains a link, so that's for clicking links. That's also something that we'll have a look at, but we also want to on navigate after the history is pushed, but before the new RSC payload is fetched. That's interesting. We have a hook for that. That's interesting. Let's see if we can use init client navigation so we don't fully reload the page and we do... yeah, so this just deals with hydration, and potentially this will also deal with not refreshing the whole page, like actual client navigation, as the name says on the tin. So let's go to, nope, this one. Client. Init client navigation from RedwoodSDK. And so if I do that, yes, XHR now. Perfect. So now we're no longer reloading the whole page when we call this navigate function here. So this used to do a full page reload, which would go through the network, re-render all the RSCs, and then come back. But that's kind of wasteful if we want to do client-side navigation. So that is one good thing, is that now we don't blow the local state. That's actually something we could have a look at with our counter. If I have a const, shouldn't have removed that one from here. That's local state. There we go. Const local count. Local count set local count use local state. Yeah, we're gonna return 2 buttons just to show you how the state might be blown if we do this. Local count. So let me revert that. Just assume that if we do local count lives in memory, but if I click this, it should reload the whole page and lose this one. There you go. But if now we enable that and we import it, now we have a client-side navigation with just a an AJAX request, HTTP fetch, whatever. And now it doesn't lose our local state. Cool. So we now have client navigation. That's good. Except that we always send a network request to the server when we update the URL. And nuqs kind of uses the different approach of doing shallow by default and then opt out of this shallow to go across the network if you do need the search params on the server. So we need to implement support for this options.shallow here. And the way we do this usually is through the history API. If we're in shallow mode, we use the history API to update the URL. And if we're in non-shallow mode, shallow false, we go through whatever the API the framework gives us in terms of calling that router. So here we need to do a switch. We always need to update this set search params optimistically, but we need to do a switch of whether to call the Cloudflare, the Redwood navigate function, or whether to update it through the history API. So let's have a look at that. Hydration, important. Not the one that fails. Right, so what is going on? Network attempt. Okay, that's interesting. Network error. Okay. Maybe because I changed something in the HMR didn't trigger. I don't know. 10 people watching the stream. Oh my, this is huge. 9, I guess now. But oh yeah, 10 is me in the other view. So yeah, hello everyone. Keep that here. Keep those 2 here. So we need to switch between. Oh, we have a message from MJ. For getting the URL from the server, we could either pass it like this in worker.tsx, route/request const URL. Yeah, okay. Oh, so we would avoid creating an extra server layout. But downside is every route need to pass such params through. Yes, that is also the problem. The one thing I want to avoid is to have the adapter at every level. If we can wrap it in a layout, and that layout does all the heavy working of getting access to this server request and pass just down the search params, the search part, to the client components, that is a bit better in terms of integration, I suppose. Sorry, again. There we go. So, yeah. If we go to worker, I guess what we were saying is that worker route. So you mean here we would have access to this. Ooh, interesting. Route slash, and then here we don't have access to the request object. I have access to somehow HTTP methods, which is interesting. Maybe it's just that TypeScript is confused of why I do that. Yeah, there you go. Requests, not whatever. But it is, yeah, request, exactly as you said. Okay. Yeah, well, I guess it's good to know that we have access to this, but it makes sense because home or even the layout here would have access to, those are assumed to be server components, and so they have access to this request object, this server-side context, request info, I think you call it, object. So let's just call this home. And see what we can do with that. So here now we need to do a switch between this and the history API. So this is where we need to do an if options.shallow. Here we'll use the history API, otherwise navigate. And so if I save this, obviously now it's not going to work because, yeah, we're going through this branch and nothing happens. And so here we can do const method is option.replace. So that would be history.replace state.bind history, history.pushState.bind history. Option.history, sorry, equals push, and we need to swap them. By default, we use replace, and if we're in push mode, we literally push. Method dot call. Is it call? Yeah, I think this arg, but I've already pre-bound it, so now we should just method like this. That's the state, so we'll use location.state just to make sure we don't history.state. Sorry. History.state, so make sure that we don't break it. And href, and this is where things might become tricky, is that nuqs has, when we do this in nuqs, we pass a special marker here to say that this update occurred from nuqs itself, so that we don't trigger other things that might cause problems. But let's just have a look at, see if this works for now. We'll deal with queuing and debounce and all these things optimistically later. So this now works, and we don't have a network request being sent. So this state is entirely local now. Let's make sure that we can connect that to the server. If we do with options shallow false, now we should have a network request. See, when I saved it, it sent it. And every time I send, it sends it through the network. Cool. So that works. Now let's try and consume those search params on the server. So our home component contains our counter. For some reason, we didn't have to wrap this in suspense. So I guess that's one advantage you have over Next, because we need to wrap use search params in suspense in Next. It's actually a good question of how this works if this counter client component is huge and it takes time to render, does it block the whole thing? How does it work? Can you do like pre-rendering with that? Maybe that'll come in a later version. I'm not sure. Just want to make sure that the recording is good on OBS. Yeah, I guess. Okay, go back to these. Up. All right. Thanks, Chris, for dropping by. That was cool to have you on the chat. So what we want to do now is potentially consume those search params in this component, which is our server component, and render it somehow. We're not going to do any magic with this or any fetching or anything like that. We just want to make sure that it works. I'm going to transform this because I don't like export const function home and do it like this. It's a bit shorter. And this should be, it's not technically a layout, but do we have access to the request info here and children? No, because we don't necessarily want children. We just want the request info. So do we have another props? Document props? Not quite. I wonder. I mean, I could do this and not render the children because we're rendering our own children here. So I just want to make sure that request info, is this what we need? Request info. I see that Chris was saying request info. I think it would be blocking if it's doing a lot. You can definitely wrap any async stuff in suspense still. Oh yeah, that's true. Something we haven't checked is like how does it work with suspense? Not particularly relevant for nuqs because we're not doing any suspense things. There is one thing I would like to try though. It's the cache thing. If we go through server-side usage, we have this kind of a hacky thing. Where is my thing? Cache. This API here that allows you to literally cache using react.cache the requests. I guess we could use it like this. I mean, it would not really work because it is literally made for Next.js and it's search param, page prop. But this allows you to not prop drill the search params in nested server components. Like you preload at the root page or layout or whatever has access to this request, the search params in this cache object, and then you can use it in a nested server component in an already parsed manner. So yeah, you see that the next gives you this search params, which is a promise. And so you parse it at the top of the page component. And then further down the line, we have this result thing. We could be in the different file. It could be like 10 layers deep. We can use this reference again to get it. And then we have access to that. So this will change in nuqs 3. Maybe I'll be able to update to get access to this from maybe nuqs/cache or something like that, so that you can have both in parallel. But in nuqs 3, we'll probably drop support from Next.js 14 so that we can only have the async version, because with pre-rendering, with cache components and all, we have to do a bit of promise chain inversion so that we can load this promise here, but not have to await it. And so we can await it in the components themselves so that you can pre-render as much as you can on the outer shell. But that'll probably come early next year, we'll see. Back to the studios. So yeah, let's see if we have access to this request info. Request info.request.url. That's all I'm interested in. Undefined, okay, because it is probably not passed. Yeah, okay. So run worker.ts. So, okay, you're not happy with this, even though I... Oh, wait, I know why. Give me the type. Layout props, yeah, because I don't want layout props. What are you expecting? Root function request info. Okay, so the whole thing is a root function. And maybe that will give it root function. Is it exported? So maybe the const work better. Export const home. What is happening here? I can't use. There we go, like that. Export const home. How does it work? Can't type JavaScript anymore. Oh, thank you. Equals. AI. Sometimes it's useful. And so that would be a root function. Do we have this? No, we don't have this type being exported, unfortunately. Where's my worker? Here. Route. So you take this. Handler is a route handler or method handler. Route handler is probably what I need. It's a route function or route component. Route components. Is this exported? Export, route middleware. Export type route or route definition. No, that would be like what's defined in the worker. Route definition, no. What we want is the route component, but it is not exported, unfortunately. All right, we can probably duck type this thing by having this request info, because oh no, because it is not, it is the request info. I see. This is request info. It is the prop. Request info. It is. Is this a built-in thing? Where does this come from? TypeScript libdom. Oh, well, today I learned. Request does not exist on request info. Yeah, but when I did that, it showed me, if I do home, and here I have this request thing here. So this is kind of like a request info, isn't it? All I'm interested in is this particularly. So I just want the requests. So maybe I can do it like that. Request. And this would be request. Request, but it's optional. No, it is not optional, actually. So we need request.url. What are you saying, Chris? Not Chris, sorry, MJ. Export function home context request info. Let's try that. Context request info. It's not happy with this. Let me try this one. This one seemed to work. Request. But now, yeah, we don't want this. We just want to pass home as is. And define request. Yeah, okay, so it is indeed optional. Request.url. And so do I have access to it here? No, still not. But we have access to it on the server. Okay. So I'll take that. Can it be always available? That would be good. Request.url. So we have the whole thing now. That's interesting. We get, okay, when we update this, we also have the RSC here, which is interesting. I mean, it makes sense. It gives you the full URL that is being returned. When we do this XHR here. So this, if you look at the whole thing, it is containing this underscore RSC, which is the marker for React Server components. So this could kind of clash if you had somehow a search param that's called underscore RSC, but oh well. Nobody in their right mind would do that. All right, what we can do from here is to load these things. So we're going to export from our counter thing. We're going to make it declarative. So I can get rid of the use local state now just to make it a bit cleaner, because we've seen that we keep local state now. That's good. But what I want to do is export a search params definition thing. But if I do it from the client, we might have some issues. So I will do counter.defs next to that. .ts no need for the x here. Not const, we're going to do const search params. We're going to describe our search params with a count of parse as integer with default 0. We're going to export a loader. Export const load count counter. Create loader from nuqs server, so we don't have the use client directive. We pass it this search param descriptor object. We're going to export a hook as well. Export const. Something to see if the bundler works with this, because I've tried that in Next. I don't think I've tried that in other frameworks. Use counter. And so this we will forward to use query states. The signature will change a little bit because now it's an object, but you'll get the idea. Now we can forward it directly, use query states from nuqs, search params, and we want this to be shallow false. So the cool thing that I can do now, I could technically do with options shallow false here, but suppose you have a lot of different search params. It's kind of a pain to specify the options per thing. So you can do it at the hook level. You can do it also at the state of data function level. There's many ways to specify options in nuqs, and they all cascade based on in what order they are defined. And soon we'll have an even better API for this. Cool. So now we can do this. But the reason I want to specify shallow here and not do options equals empty and spread those options here is import that from nuqs, please. And it is a type. Yeah. The reason I want to do it here is locality of behavior, because we are basically saying with the loader function that we want to consume those search params on the server. So it makes sense to have shallow false next to those definitions. Again, with the unified API soon, this will make it a bit cleaner to define all these things. What are you saying, MJ? Types here, you got request there too. Ask you about the RSC marker. We have also one for server functions. That's something else. Server functions is probably not something we're going to look at today, but RSC action ID is the function. Okay, yeah. Try this for the home page import. Request info from RSC worker. Aha. Thank you, Dima. Let's keep that on the side. Home. Where'd you get it from? Import from RSC worker. That would be a type, I suppose. I could just import type the whole thing. I can't type. Request info. And so this would be that. Nice. Thank you, Dima. Let's see if we just changed the type, so the runtime will not change. And my worker is still happy. Cool. Thank you, man. Counter.def. So now we have our definitions for our search params. We have the loader to load it server side, the hook to consume it client side. So we're going to do no longer this, but use counter. And so now the thing is going to change a little bit, because this is now an object that contains this, and this expects an object. So we'll do old and return an object that contains count. Old.count plus one. Otherwise it's not going to work. And so now what we can do is add more search params into this definition object. So this use query states is very useful if you have multiple things that are related together and then you want to pull them into one hook, like filters, pagination, all the table stuff that you need. It can be useful to all have it at once. And yeah. Okay, and the one thing I want to do is do a button that resets. Button reset. On click. And to reset things, we could do that, but what we can do is also this. And with just one search param, it's not going to show you a ton of things. We'll probably do a search input afterwards to have both types together and see how it behaves. But what we can do now is, load this thing on the server. So use this load counter in our home component. So const server count equals load counter. And here I can do request.url. This is a string, but I believe it should be fine with it. Loaders are very flexible. You can pass pretty much everything you want in there. And as long as there is search params somewhere in there, it should be able to find them. So it accepts URLs, URL search params, strings, which are either just the search or the full URL, an object like a record of key to value in string infinite form, whatever you get from the search params page prop, I guess, in next, or the whole request object actually. So we could just do that. That would also work. Let's not bother too much with prop drilling. And server count, what we're going to do is render that in here, server count. And yes, indeed, this is an object that contains this property. Server count 27, cool. Now, if I increase, yeah, that works. The one thing I want to show you is how they can get out of sync if I was to debounce that. And we can do that in our definitions. No, actually, I'll do it. Where is my counter component? Here. I'll do it at the state updater function level. If you debounce, you probably always want to do it when you update the state, because there will be many cases where you don't want to debounce. So limit your updates debounce nuqs. We'll do 1 second so that it's visibly something happens. Boom. You see? I click, the state updates instantly, and 1 second later, the network request is being sent and the server updates. So we now have the whole shebang, the whole end-to-end behavior with nuqs. So yeah, 9.5. Not bad. Not bad at all. There are still a lot of things that we can improve with this. For example, I don't have another page here, but one thing I want to show you, I can probably create another page in my work. We probably need another thing for that. Another page, we'll call it, I don't know, other.tsx. Export function, other. This is another page. Yeah, that'll do. Let's render that in our thing. We also want to wrap it into our layout, just make sure that everything is the same. So I believe I can do it like that. Import app pages other, just make sure that we can navigate to it. Other, this is another page, cool. Also, yeah, when we went back, everything was neat and clean, that's good. But what I want to see is if I add a link in my home to other, yeah, that reset works too, that's good. If I add a link from my home page to other, I can actually probably do a server link. Do we have a link component in this thing, or we just use an A, I guess? Href equals, and this is where probably the link function from that makes sense, because now we have type links. Another thing that we can do is that go to other page, make sure that this works. Yep, that works, cool. No, I just need a little bit of, let's move that into a div so that it wraps around. Cool. But the one thing I wanted to show is that there is a little problem here. Because we have this 1 second delay, if I click the counts, it will queue this update in the URL to be applied 1 second after I've stopped the last click. But if I navigate while I do that, it is still queued. And so what will happen is that it will apply this, what's it called? This search param on the other page. And so in all the other adapters, I have ways to spy on navigations and cancel all those queues. So I'm just wondering, because I think by default we have this protection built in for the custom adapters, but I'm not exactly sure. So let's have a look. If I click this and I go, yeah, you see it updates at the end. So we need to be able to reset the queues on navigation. And unfortunately, I don't think we expose that in nuqs. So that would be something to potentially expose from the custom adapters, is a way to have like some form of function that I can call to cancel those queues. But we are in debug, and I believe that I do export nuqs. Let me just have a look at the how it's done. Queues, reset queues. This is what we need to call. But the global throttle queue, I believe in dev, I export it somewhere. Maybe I'm mistaken. Maybe I did that one time and reverted it. No, fortunately, I don't think I do. History, patch history. Do I do this here? Because this is something that I would need to do. Like the only way to spy, well, the only way generally to spy on navigation is to patch the history API methods, and when they are called, you know, without this marker, which is, where is it? This little marker that I add here as the second argument of replace state, or what's it called? Where is it? Ooh, here. This marker here, which is a legacy thing. It used to be the title for the page when you updated your browser history. Where are my arrows? When the browser history here, you could change the title that was shown here, but no browser actually implemented that, so it got deprecated, and now it's just a legacy thing that we can't break. But I kind of use it to detect whether the update comes from nuqs or not, and that tells me if it doesn't come from nuqs, it's somewhere else that triggered a navigation, and so I can flush and reset all my queues. So yeah, kind of hacky, but unless we have the navigation API coming everywhere in baseline, and that's probably not for a couple of years at least, this is the only thing that we can do. But we have in our client here in init client navigation, I believe we had on navigate. So this would be the perfect place, I suppose, to flush those queues. If only we had a way to do that. So unfortunately we don't. So we'll probably have to stop here. The last thing I want to show you is if we can do type safe linking with this links that here. We're going to do, what is the type for that actually? Ooh, it's kind of gnarly. Can we wrap that? Export const link. What I can try and do is, if I go to my search params definition file, link to counter. Export function link to counter. No, I don't want that. What I want is, that's a function, yeah. What do I want actually as an argument for this? No, this is not a function, this is just const, and they will be a function, but we don't define it as a function. Equals create serializer of those search params and binds null link slash, our thing is on slash, I guess, a link coming from shared links. So here we have a type safe path name. No, AI, you're just hallucinating here. Stop it. And we bind this strong path name to these search params. And so this create serializer accepts a base path as the first argument. So this is what we're doing with bind here. We're binding the first argument as this path name here, and then we apply this search params definition thing so that this link to counter now, if we go to our other page, we could do something like this. Return href go to 42, for example, the answer of life, universe, and everything, link to counter, count 42, and here you see that this is type safe. We have just the count property set to a number. If I set it to a string, it will yell at me. If I set it wrong, it will yell at me. Type safe linking. And so if I go to my other page, if I go to 42, we go back to /count 42. Cool. So that is actually easy to do with this type safe thing. And so I think we've done the whole demo here of having both client-side updates, server-side loading, linking. We've done the whole shebang essentially with Cloudflare workers, with Redwood. So what did we build in terms of actual things that we might want to put in the Chatien registry? Because this will probably come into the registry thing, where we define custom adapters from the community. The one thing that would make this official is that if we had an end-to-end test system to run this locally, but I wonder if you can do a build of this thing. Is there package? Whoops. Can I build this locally? Vite build, I suppose. Vite preview. We could potentially have an end-to-end framework test environment for this and make it an official thing. But I will probably start it with a community one where I push all the code that we have here. I'll make this repo public as well on GitHub. And yeah, this is working pretty well. So there we go. We have in how long? An hour and a half built a custom adapter for Redwood in nuqs. And so we'll go back to that. So thank you all for watching. Thank you all for all the discussions in the chat. That was a productive stream. And I will see you all on the internet. I will post all these things. I have recorded this video, so I'll put it on YouTube as well after a little bit of editing. And I'll post this all on the socials so you can follow along, get the code, and hopefully soon have the ability to install this custom adapter for Redwood from the Chatien CLI, from the registry. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.